The whitetail. America's most widespread and well-known game animal, these deer have become deeply embedded in our culture and are seen as symbols of wild freedom. For centuries, they fed, clothed, and inspired us, serving as the state mammal for 11 states. These deer are the widest ranging of their kind, living from coast to coast and having adapted to thrive in all sorts of habitats, from mountains to deserts, swamps, forests, and even the rapidly changing world of man. No matter where we live, everyone in America seems to know of the whitetail, but few truly know much about it. Despite being so common, the whitetail is shrouded in mystery. For many people, all that we see is their warning flag of a tail, fading away into the brush. Join me as we take a look at the secretive lives of the American deer. Long before Old World explorers set foot on this land, America was a vastly different place. While not entirely untouched, this continent had far more natural places, with much of the Northeast being dominated by mature timber. In fact, some early settlers often exaggerated that a squirrel could travel from the Atlantic to the Mississippi without even touching the ground. Whitetails lived alongside many now extinct species, like the eastern elk. These magnificent members of the deer family roamed across the entire continent and would sometimes compete with the whitetail for food, especially during harsh winters. Both timber and red wolves could be found throughout the east. The elusive mountain lion also roamed this country, sometimes competing with the wolf. Various Native American tribes also lived here, such as the Lenape or Delaware people. For them, the whitetail was a source of food, clothing, and an important aspect of their culture. When settlers first set foot on this country, it may have felt like entering a different world. I often wonder what it would have felt like to be here hundreds of years ago, and hear the mystic elk bugles and wolf howls echo throughout the land. As with the Lenape, whitetail became very important to the lives of early settlers. The deer not only provided them with food and clothing, but also a source of income. Deer hide sold for $1, which is where the nickname buck originates. On the path to progress, mankind left few alive. Many of the eastern forests were clear-cut, and some species like the wolf and elk were killed off or pushed out, retreating to the rugged country of the west. Not even the whitetail was spared, as their numbers were declining from commercial hunting and habitat destruction. History is full of lessons for the future. From this ecological tragedy, we learn to not take for granted the bountiful gifts of nature. The whitetail was nearly extinct, with around 300,000 individuals left in the entire country. During the turn of the century, people grew more concerned about the state of our wildlife and looked for ways to protect and preserve what was left. Ironically, one of the practices which contributed to the fall of this creature was the key to its recovery. Hunters became big advocates for wildlife conservation, pushing states to enact laws establishing seasons and limiting the amount of animals that could be taken. In 1937, the Federal Aid for Wildlife Restoration Act, more commonly known as the Pittman-Robertson Act, was passed. This law imposed an 11% tax on firearms, bows, and other hunting gear in order to fund projects such as habitat restoration, which paved the way for the return of whitetails, turkey, and many other wild animals. This was the beginning of modern wildlife conservation. Today there are approximately 30 million whitetail deer in the United States, thriving in a wide variety of habitats. There are about 16 subspecies in the U.S., each adapted to the various climates and habitats this country has to offer. The largest subspecies, O.V. borealis, or the Northwoods whitetail, ranges across our northeastern states, from Maine as far south as Maryland, and here, in the Highlands region of northern New Jersey. The forests, meadows, swamps, farmland, and suburbs make for perfect whitetail habitat. The early hours of the morning are my favorite time to search for wildlife. Witnessing the world rise with the sun is one of the most beautiful experiences that can be had here on Earth. It's early spring, a time for change for the organisms here. Longer days and rising temperatures soothe the weary deer after a chilling winter. The bucks have shed their cumbersome antlers and will go off either alone or in a bachelor herd of bucks. These antlers may be picked up by a curious hiker, or left ignored, will provide various rodent species with a source of calcium. Whitetails are masters of stealth and disguise. They often move slowly and blend into their environment surprisingly well. At times, it seems as if they aren't even here. Being prey species, they are very cautious and will react to even the slightest strange sound or smell. Deer rely heavily on their sense of smell, even using scent to communicate with other deer. The whitetails have approximately 297 million olfactory receptors, which are used to process smell. To put this into perspective, us humans only have about 5 million. One important lesson I've learned for observing whitetails is to watch the wind. Even the slightest breeze can carry your scent through the forest. Staying downwind will allow you to get closer to whitetails, as well as many other animals out in the woods. Downwind basically means that the wind is blowing in your face, rather than the back of your neck. Once this young doe catches wind of me, she retreats deeper into the forest, waving her namesake as a warning to the rest of the herd. While their running speed is 30 miles per hour, they don't rely on that alone to evade a threat. Their ability to maneuver through the thick forest habitat allows them to virtually disappear. Whitetails are also exceptional jumpers, being known to leap over 8-foot fences without even getting a running start. Whitetails have a wide palate and will feed on nearly every plant in this forest, even poison ivy. To stay healthy, a deer will eat 6 to 8% of its body weight each day. So much of their time is spent foraging for leaves, twigs, grasses, lichens, nuts, and fruits. Rainstorms roll through whitetail country, melting the remaining ice and snow, and allowing various plant species to regrow. The abundance of water and extended hours of daylight transform the forest into a lush blanket of greenery. Out here in the wild, late spring is the season of life. It is now when baby animals see the world for the first time and begin to learn how to survive. Fox kids frolic and play at their den site. A small band of gosling follow their parents, feeding on vegetation such as these leaves that were knocked over during the recent storm. For raccoons, everything is a toy, including their siblings and their mother. The mother raccoon forages with her ever-curious young. Watching all these kids can be quite a handful, especially with various predators wandering about. In order to safely nurse them, she leads them up into the safety of an old hollow tree. This doe seems exceptionally cautious, and I soon discover why. A newborn fawn waits patiently by her side. Whitetail fawns, like any other hooved mammals, must get up quickly if they are to survive. A whitetail fawn can stand 20 minutes after birth and can walk in just an hour. The doe carefully traverses through the thick brush, with her little baby trailing behind. The fawn is adorned with a white speckled coat, which serves as camouflage on the forest floor. The spots are meant to simulate the dapples of sunlight that break through the canopy, making them almost invisible on the forest floor. Fawns are also born with a very faint scent. The mother will lick her fawn clean, removing any smell of blood or afterbirth. She will also eat her fawn's feces, ensuring that there is no scent that could attract potential predators. Oftentimes, does will leave their fawns alone to forage. When mom is out feeding, the fawn will hide. However, once he figures out how he can walk and run, he can't help but explore the forest. While still young and inexperienced, the fawn is gifted with incredible senses. These woods are ripe with new sights, sounds, and smells. Hundreds of other creatures call this place home. The song of the eastern bluebird rings out across the meadow. This ornate songbird is one of the many signs of spring. In just a month, this buck has made some progress on his antler growth. The fuzz that coats the antlers is what's known as deer velvet. This protects and supplies nutrients for the growing bone. Deer antler regrowth is one of the most incredible occurrences in nature. Each year, the deer shed their old antlers and completely regrow their rack by summer's end, making these antlers one of the fastest growing tissues in the animal kingdom. Despite having small brains, whitetails are surprisingly smart, capable of learning new things, and possessing a fairly good memory of their home range. They can remember specific locations like a hole in the fence, a thicket where they can find shelter, and the best feeding spots. Right now, for the fawns, the forest seems to be an endless maze of trees. But throughout the summer, their mother will teach them the various spots and trails of their home range. Another whitetail fawn explores the forest, only this one's not alone. A healthy, mature doe will often birth twins. Growing up in the wild with a sibling has many advantages. They serve as an extra set of eyes and ears, a playmate, and someone who can clean those hard-to-reach places. Grooming is not only important for removing bugs and parasites, but it also helps strengthen bonds within the herd. As I explore the forest, I come across an unusual-looking deer bedded down by the water's edge. Chronic wasting disease, or CWD, sometimes called zombie deer disease, is a fatal neurological illness that causes severe weight loss, excessive drooling, and drastic behavior changes. This individual seemed to show no fear of me. Either that or she was too tired to run away. With little to no predators to keep their population healthy, diseases such as this can spread like wildfire throughout the herd. Nature will always have a way of balancing itself out, but it may not always be pretty. The next morning, this doe is dead. Life in the wild is full of uncertainty, especially for the whitetail. But anyone who knows the complexity of life in nature understands the necessity of death. Her carcass will provide food for various insects, vultures, foxes, and many other creatures. Even a pair of feral dogs investigate the carcass. These invasive canines will sometimes prey on deer. The decaying deer will also provide nutrients to the soil, helping various plant species grow, which in turn will feed her kin. As the fawns mature, they begin to join their mother on foraging trips. At around 2 weeks of age, they begin to try solid food for the first time. However, they will still be dependent on their mother's milk for the remainder of the summer. The dog days of summer bring long, hot afternoons that seem to drag on forever. During this time, deer aren't too active during daylight hours. A pair of young bucks wade in the river to cool off. One of the more vocal of the whitetail's neighbors is the belted kingfisher. These birds feed almost exclusively on fish, and do so by sitting on a perch, waiting for the opportunity to strike. Like a missile, they dive into the water, catching an unsuspecting fish with their sharp bill. The fawns bed down on the forest floor, slightly cooled by the shade of the canopy. It's too hot out to frolic and play like they did in the morning, so they decide to take an afternoon nap. While asleep, the fawns keep their ears erect in order to pick up any potential threats. Every now and then, deer will take a quick look around before dozing off again. Cool summer evenings are greeted by the songs and calls of insects, frogs, and birds. Deer eyes are more sensitive to low light than ours, allowing them to be active at all hours of the day. Whitetails are crepuscular creatures, meaning that they are most active at dawn and dusk. Here in the small town of Boonton, carnivals and fireworks mark the end of summer for people. For whitetails, the shortening days and longer nights prepare them for the coming winter. Near the end of the summer, bucks begin to shed the layer of velvet surrounding their antlers, revealing a sharp, fully grown rack. A buck such as this 8-pointer has tines that branch out. This is known as a rack buck. A buck without tines is known as a spike. Antler size is often determined by genetics, age, and diet. These antlers aren't for decoration, however. They are weapons that will be used against rivals during the upcoming rut. Whitetails have a home range of about 1 square mile, or 650 acres. Outside of the rut, deer will rarely travel far, so long as their basic needs are met. One exception is when bucks will return to their fall range by summer's end. For this buck, that means crossing the reservoir. A whitetail taking to the water is not as uncommon as you may think. They may not look like strong swimmers, however they can reach speeds of up to 15 miles per hour in the water, especially if they are escaping a predator. Once he's made it to the other side, the buck is exhausted and must regain his lost strength. He'll be needing it in the next couple of months. This fawn is curious and approaches the buck. He's probably never seen a rack of antlers like this before and is trying to make some sense of them. This buck could quite possibly be his father. Whitetail bucks will father many fawns, however they take no part in raising them. Each morning has a refreshing briskness in the air. The fawns will soon learn that this plentiful season they were born into won't last forever. Like the leaves, a deer's coat changes with the seasons. The reddish-brown summer coat is shed during this time and replaced with a thicker dark brown coat, more suitable for the cooling temperature. This buttonbuck is trying to make some sense of the small bones protruding from his skull. These are called pedicles, and it's from these bones where antler growth begins. If he can survive, his rack will grow and branch out just like this mature buck. The shorter days compel bucks to be more active as they patrol their territory. In early autumn, bucks create various signs throughout their territory. Scrapes and rubs are common buck sign. A scrape is an exposed patch of dirt, often under an overhanging branch. A buck will paw away at the ground and urinate on his scrape in order to communicate with other deer. Rubs are another buck sign you can come across. A rub is a spot at the base of a tree where the buck has peeled away the bark with his head and antlers. Scent glands on the buck's forehead leave a distinct scent on the rub. Like the scrape, rubs serve as a warning to other bucks and an invitation to does. Rubs can also be the result of shedding velvet or to release built-up testosterone. When rubbing his rack on a tree, the antlers are stained with different colors resulting from different tree species. Whitetail deer can live to be about 15 years in the wild, with the oldest recorded specimen being 22 years old. However, few deer make it that far in life. The average lifespan is about 2 to 4.5 years in the wild, and that's if they survive fawnhood and reach sexual maturity, which is 2 years for bucks and a little less than a year for does. Like a cow, this bedded down buck begins to chew his cud. Whitetails have 4-chambered stomachs, which means that they can eat a lot of food at once and digest it later. Deer are what's known as ruminants, which means they have 4 stomach chambers. The first of these chambers is used for storage. When the deer is ready, the food will go back into the mouth so it can be further broken down. Each fall, oak trees shed their acorns, a favorite treat for nearly every forest resident. Squirrels quite literally go nuts, collecting as many acorns as they can for the winter. The food is cached away underground and in tree cavities. The whitetail doesn't store away any food, so they gorge themselves on acorns and other plants. In a matter of months, their options for food will be extremely limited. Buried acorns that are forgotten by squirrels will grow into trees. While they probably don't realize it, squirrels are keystone members of this ecosystem, acting as tree farmers. Without them, creatures like the whitetail would eat up all the acorns, and there would be no new trees left in the forest. Bucks are most active during the fall season, actively checking scrape sites and scouting out potential mates. The evenings are a lot cooler now, and they come a lot sooner in the day. With ramped up testosterone and sharpened antlers, the bucks are now ready for the most important time in their lives. A new morning graces the dark world as it does every day, only this one's different. The daily dew that accumulates on the ground has frozen. The first frost is one of many signs that the rut has begun. This is the time of year that the bucks have spent all their lives preparing for. They are more active than ever, traveling far and wide in search of does. Triggered by the shorter days, the deer undergo hormonal changes. Each doe will go into heat for 1.5 days. One that is ready to breed is often referred to as an estrus doe. Estrus does urinate frequently, releasing a chemical substance known as pheromones. The pheromones alert all the other bucks in the area. Amidst the confusion of the rut, bucks will often trespass into the territories of other bucks. This massive 9-point buck has just entered into unfamiliar territory. When two similarly matched bucks meet, a battle is often inevitable. These fights can be brutal, and in some cases, go to the death. The intruding buck has won the battle. However, he has no time to rest. The scent of an estrus doe is fresh in the fall air. To us, this process may seem brutal. However, it ensures that only the bucks with the strongest genes will continue their bloodline. Rival bucks aren't the only thing that whitetails need to worry about this time of year. Hunting season is now in full swing, and many outdoorsmen head out into the woods in hopes of taking home some venison and maybe a nice set of antlers. Many people nowadays are against hunting, seeing it as a cruel, primitive blood sport. However, throughout much of their range, whitetails lack big predators such as wolves, and without them, these creatures will overpopulate. Since we were the ones to kill off these majestic predators, it became our duty to balance the ecosystem. In a way, hunting is a correction of our past mistake, preserving the land we once destroyed and carrying on the legacy of the predators we eradicated. In our modern society, we've grown detached from the natural world, so for many hunters, this sport is an outlet to reconnect with this beautiful planet. December brings a drastic drop in temperature and shorter days. The first flakes of snow fall upon the earth. Whether they are ready or not, the whitetails, like every other creature, must embrace the inevitable winter. The rut is winding down, with many bucks searching for food, replacing their lost energy. This buck spends the winter with a herd of does and fawns. The rut has been hard on him, costing him part of his antler. He may very well have been the buck who lost to the 9-pointer earlier this season. The herd forages for whatever food they can find. The only problem now is that the quality of food has greatly decreased. While options are limited, the white-tailed deer is extremely adaptable and will feed on pretty much anything they can find. I decide to head out one frozen morning. It's a miracle to me that the deer have survived these cold, chilling nights. On this frigid January morning, the deer bask in the warm rays of the morning sun. During these harsh months, they paw away at the snow, searching for any remaining acorns, leaves, and twigs. By February, the winter begins to loosen its grip. The weather is still very cold, but the days have grown longer. This buck has finally shed his cumbersome antlers due to a decrease in testosterone. Soon the spring peepers will re-emerge and serenade throughout the chilly late winter nights. By April, a new fawn will be born, restarting the life cycle of the whitetail. In recent decades, we've been learning to once again live alongside wildlife. The fact that a creature as wild and free as the whitetail still thrives in our ever-changing world is inspiring for the future of wildlife conservation. They've come a long way and have grown with us since this country's founding, and as long as we do our part in the ecosystem, they'll be with us for future generations.